Hey, what's going on, guys? Hope everybody had a good weekend. I apologize if the air conditioner is getting picked up on the microphone, but it is just insanely hot here in New York City, where I live. It's like I think 300 degrees outside, so you're gonna have to deal with the AC running. It's better than watching me profusely sweat as I make these videos. So, all right, today I wanted to talk about the calls to abolish ICE, which have really been picking up over the last week. So that lady, I'm blanking on her name. Oh, geez, this is bad. Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, who is the Democratic Socialist who just unseated Joe Crowley, beat out, just primaried him here in New York. Looks like she's going to be next congresswoman. She was running on abolishing ICE, and that seems to be very popular amongst the Democratic base now. And now you've had a few other like big Democrats who have come out. I know Kristen Gillibrand and a few others have come out supporting abolishing ICE, and I find that to be pretty interesting. The effect that Donald Trump's had on the Democrats has been really amazing. This is something I've been noticing since Donald Trump was a candidate, but especially since he's been president. And it's been interesting to watch. I mean, the Democrats are they've transformed themselves. Forget the effect Trump's had on the Republicans. The effect he's had on the Democrats has been more substantial. And so the Democrats now are like Russia is the big enemy. Putin's behind everything. You always have to trust the CIA and the FBI, and even if you see the outrage over the idea that Trump would impose tariffs, like they've become free traders. The Democrats are basically 80s Reagan Republicans at this point. So that transformation has been pretty wild. But this one I did not see coming, and I think this to me personally was even more interesting. The Democrats now calling to abolish ICE. And I believe, maybe I'm wrong, but I believe this is the first time in my life, certainly in my adult life, since I've been paying attention to politics, that the Democrats have called to abolish any government agency. Republicans are always claim they want to abolish government agencies. It's like something they say during election season, like I want to abolish the Department of Education or something like that. It used to be in the Republican platform, but every Republican president of my lifetime has just increased the Department of Education. I guess Trump hasn't done that yet, but certainly Reagan, George H.W. Bush, George W. Bush all increased it. But then they always, they like to say during campaign season, oh, we're going to abolish this department or that department. The only one who ever meant it was Ron Paul. He actually would have worked to abolish these things. But even, standard regular Republicans would say this stuff, right? Like there's the famous moment where Rick Perry forgot which department he wanted to abolish. But the point he was making was that he wanted to abolish 3 of them. I guess he couldn't name all of them. But also, we all know that if Rick Perry had gotten in, none of them would have been abolished. This is just what they all say. None of this stuff ever happens. But to hear Democrats calling to abolish ICE is kind of interesting to me. And, I got to say, my anarcho-capitalist ears perk up when you hear the party of government calling to abolish a government agency. I think maybe we should take them up on this and just push it a little bit further. So if you actually look deeper into what they're saying, most of these Democrats are basically saying we should abolish ICE and then replace it with like a new ICE. So it's not even clear exactly what the point of this is. They're basically all saying, well, no, it's not like we wouldn't have anyone serving the role of ICE. It's just we would abolish them, and then I get to say I'm for abolishing ICE. And none of them actually want to say straight up like I'm for open borders. That's what I'm for. But but that is, they kind of want the energy of that without actually being held accountable to that position, because the truth is advocating for open borders is not very popular, and certainly with the Democrats, the size of the state that they want, it's just not going to work out very well, and I think a lot of people realize that. So abolishing ICE, okay, I'd say let's take it a step further. Let's abolish ICE. Let's abolish the entire Department of Homeland Security, which is a nightmare, a monstrosity and a nightmare. And it was created by George W. Bush. And a pretty good rule of thumb is anything George W. Bush created should probably be abolished. So that I'd be fine. Let's abolish the entire Department of Homeland Security. Let's while we're at it, let's abolish the FBI and the CIA too. I'm sure Democrats won't be on board with that one this time, but I'd be fine with that as well. But I will say that if we're going to get into abolishing government agencies or government policies, and we're talking about the immigration issue, and as I said, the Democrats don't want to just own open borders. They don't want to because they know this is going to be a losing issue in any election. And the Republicans, at least the Republican base, certainly the ones who voted for Donald Trump, are they're very concerned about people flooding into the country and illegal immigration. So they're not going to get on board with abolishing ICE. But it seems to me that the obvious policy that actually should be one thing that could bring everybody together and get behind. And I don't think there's too many policies out there right now that everyone can get behind. And that policy would be to abolish the war on drugs, legalize drugs. I think this is the only policy that's related to immigration and just a bigger policy in America right now that actually you could get the left and the right wing of this country, who are so at each other's throats, on board for. And by the way, it's the best policy. It's the best policy to control the immigration system. It gives everybody a little bit a little something of what they want. So if you're one of these Donald Trump supporters and your biggest issue is that there are people flooding into our country who you don't want into our country, well, look, the truth is a lot of them don't particularly like the idea of babies being ripped apart from their mothers. It's the reason why Donald Trump, wrote that executive order, because it's certainly not super popular to see that happening. So here's a way that you could do it, and not have to rip any families apart. Abolish the war on drugs. Abolish the DEA. How about that? Forget ICE. Abolish the DEA. Stop fucking around in all these in all these other countries. You completely undercut all of the cartels who make all their money off drugs. They're not going to be smuggling drugs into our country if drugs are legal in our country, right? And there you go. Now the left should be able to get on board with this. People on the left have kind of been opposed to the war on drugs in general for forever. It's never like a priority for them, but they certainly rhetorically are against the war on drugs. It has the added benefit of doing something really good for black people in America and poor people in America in general, which the left used to talk a lot about, and I assume some of the people voting still pretend to care about that stuff. So yeah, if you wanted to do anything that would help out the highest crime neighborhoods, that would help out black people in America, it's probably the best policy you could pass. It's just legalize all drugs, abolish the war on drugs. Forget my biggest problem with the war on drugs, which is like the moral aspect of it, which is that it's basically legalized slavery, throwing human beings in cages for a nonviolent crime and for a substance that a whole lot of people use. If you want to be honest, believe me, I've done hundreds of shows over at Fox News, and even over there at Fox News, believe it or not, there's some people who are using cocaine after they clock out of their shows. A whole bunch of people who smoke pot over there. They're fine. None of them want to get thrown in jail, but they're just fine with it basically happening to poor people who can't afford lawyers. So yeah, you'd look, the highest crime rate in American history was in the last 2 years of Prohibition. And as soon as we legalized alcohol, the murder rate started plummeting. It was the highest murder rate, I should say. And the rate started plummeting as soon as we legalized it. Yeah, and all those gangs, those Al Capones that rose up, and they used to just be kind of hang out in their ethnic neighborhoods, and then they got big all across the cities. Yeah, they all kind of they basically had to move into other black markets like gambling and prostitution, legalize those too while we're at it. But yeah, if you wanted to do anything to cut down on America's gun crime, cut down on violence, cut down on mass incarceration, No, there you go. There's your and immigration too. Cut down on the amount of people who are flooding into the country. Take all the take all this money making operation away from the cartels. That's the perfect way to do it. That's the best way. And as far as like for particularly for libertarians, where there's kind of like a bit of a split between libertarians who a lot of people a lot of libertarians believe in open borders, and then a lot of libertarians believe that we can't have open borders under the current situation, and that there's basically a problem because there's the welfare state, and people come in and they're a burden on the taxpayer, or they vote for Democrats and stuff like that. It's like, okay, well, a lot of that argument comes down to kind of like a practical argument. Whether people say like, well, we'd be for open borders if we could eliminate the welfare state, but we can't eliminate the welfare state tomorrow, so we can at least crack down on immigration tomorrow. But I guess the problem with that is that cracking down on immigration is also pretty unpopular too. I mean, it's not super unpopular amongst people. Like, I think most voters would want to crack down in immigration. But if you actually look at it, if Donald Trump tries to do anything major with cracking down on immigration, he's going to be fought at every single step. If you try to cut down, you try to end the welfare state, yeah, you're going to be fought at every step by entrenched interests and Democrats who say like, oh my God, these people are going to starve to death, blah, 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 even though that's all a bunch of crap. They will say that, and it'll be hard to do. But how about this one? The war on drugs. You could absolutely get a majority of the country to be behind that if anyone just made it a central issue of their campaign. So present it that way. But forget abolishing ICE, abolish the DEA, legalize all drugs. It'll do, the Democrats can say, oh, we're doing something for minorities, finally. They've been talking about doing that forever. They can finally actually do something. For the Republicans, it'll cut down on the flow of people coming into this country, which is supposed to be your big issue. And, while we're talking about abolishing government programs or government agencies, how about that one? How about the most evil domestic policy in American history? In modern American history, at least, probably since slavery, because really it is just another form of slavery. So anyway, how about that? Abolish the DEA and the war on drugs. All right, that's the video for today. I got a podcast today at 3 p.m. Podcast today at 6 p.m. with Owen Benjamin. You can watch that at gasdigitalnetwork.com. And then I'll be back with another video tomorrow at 3 p.m. All right, be good, everybody. Later.